Hello and welcome to a talk with YAF. YAF is the Youth for Adaptation Finance in Africa. I am your host, Orish Mary, and on today's episode, we are going to be talking about AXIA and unveiling the urgency of our changing world in the midst of the climate crisis. Today, we have in our midst an environmentalist, a climate change advocate, who is the executive director of the African Coalition for Sustainable Energy and Access, and he is equally the co-founder and chair of political and technical affairs at the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance, and he is none other than Dr. Augustine Jamshi. Good morning, sir, and welcome.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you for having me.
Okay, sir. It's a pleasure to have you here today in our midst. So, sir, before we continue, I would like to remind us all to please, this is our very first episode. Can you kindly share, like, and comment? Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time in our next episode. First of all, sir, I would like you to tell us, because we are here today and everyone is willing and eager to hear about climate change and your story. Can you please tell us how you became a climate change advocate?
Well, to put me in a small box of climate change advocacy is not going to be fair. I am an environmental advocate from birth. I was born in a mountainous village in the northwestern part of Cameroon,
Okay.
and my grandfather, who was my babysitter, was a shaman. Shaman means traditional medicine practitioner, and he was by nature an environmentalist. So, having grown with him from birth, he inculcated the essence of environmental protection, living in harmony with nature in my very being. So, I didn't become an environmental advocate along the way. I became one as a baby because of the upbringing by my late grandfather. And the journey has been a very beautiful one for me because I live my passion. When I was growing with him, we will go to the palm bush, we will go to a forest. In fact, where I come from, the only remaining few hectares of forest is the family forest that is protected by our ancestral rights left to us by our grandfather. And so we kind of agree knowing that man and his environment are inseparable. So there's reciprocal, care that comes from that existence. That you care for the environment cares for you.
Exactly.
And so that is what made me to be whom I am today. And I don't think I am any other thing without the environment.
Interesting. And one thing I have taken from it is if you take care of nature, nature will take care of you. Thank you
Surely.
very much, sir. And as the founder of the African Coalition for Sustainable Energy and Access, I would like you to tell us, how did this initiative come about?
I would rather you ask about the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance,
Okay.
of which I'm a co-founder.
Okay, sir.
I am just the executive director of the African Coalition for Sustainable Energy and Access. And if you may ask that question, asking about the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance, I would be happy to tell you that the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance was created out of a need for Africans to come together and articulate their own issues as far as climate change is concerned from purely an African lens, an African perspective. Before it was created, and which was in July 2008 in Johannesburg, we African environmentalists used to attend conference of the parties of the Convention on Climate Change, and we were very few of us then. And most often, we would meet each other at that conference, and we didn't come on our own, like from Africa together. You go and meet somebody from Kenya that has been brought by another organization, probably from the north, and you from Cameroon brought by another organization from the north, and then you only meet there and you have nothing in common, apart from the fact that you are all, both of you are black people. And then the African voice and the African position was hardly ever on the table. You know, before then, climate change was discussed as a scientific and a very elitist scientific issue.
Okay.
And but the impacts of climate change are not felt just by those elites, academic elites and the political elites up there. It is felt by the people on the ground. So we thought that it was important to demystify the concept of climate change,
Okay.
because it's what we live every day on a daily basis, especially our communities that live in rural areas, depending on rain to grow their crops, depending on the environment for their survival. We cannot be talking about climate change just as an environmental issue or a scientific issue, a science issue. It is the human being in general. It is economy, it is culture, it is science, it is environment, it's everything. So in order for sustainable decisions to be taken about climate change, the voice of those who are on the ground, who suffer from the impacts of climate change more than anyone else, must be brought to the table.
Of course.
So PACJA was therefore created to bring that voice from the ground to the national and international level. That is how it came about. And that was, as I said before, in July in 2008 in Johannesburg, South Africa, at the sidelines of the African Ministerial Conference on Environment.
Okay. Wow. That's really interesting, giving a voice to the voiceless. We applaud you for your work, sir, and we are really grateful for what the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance is doing and is going to continue doing for us in Africa. In simple words, sir, I would like you to tell us what is climate change and why do you think there's an emergency in addressing this issue?
Climate change, I don't want to go into the academic definition
Of course.
of climate change because it will not make sense to people. And PACJA is about demystifying the concept of climate change.
Of course.
You know, climate change, the impacts of climate change is seen from various levels. Change in weather patterns, rainfall, temperature, and other things that we have that are affecting the environment. When I was growing as a young boy in the village, as I said, I'm always proud to say I'm a village boy. We knew that March 15th, rains that come as from March 15th are rains for planting.
Okay.
That is why the cultural calendar, the academic calendar, and every other calendar, agricultural calendar, was built around this. That was in the 60s and the 70s, right? But after some time, the rains are very unpredictable. Sometimes they come earlier. They come in March, they come in February. And when you plant, they may go and never come back again. The crops start germinating and then they dry off. When you grow in an area where, like I said, in the mountainous area, I grew around the Ndu Plateau, which is one of the highest points in Cameroon. We never had incidents of malaria because it was a very cold environment where malaria carrying vectors, the mosquitoes, cannot survive. And we used to see this icy leaves in the morning, early mornings in the dry season.
Okay.
Because frost, what you call frost, right? And those days, we never had, incidents of malaria. In fact, malaria was called in our local dialect the headache of the plains. If someone went to the mop plane, which is still in Dongamanto, and came back with malaria, we said it's the headache of the planes because it is hotter there and there's incidence of mosquitoes and malaria there.
Okay.
So we never had that. But now, if you go to the new health district, a majority of illnesses are related to malaria. Those are some of the impacts of climate change because areas that were usually cold are now hot. Some areas that were hot are now cold. So climate change, the impacts of climate change are felt in many ways. For Europe, for instance, for the North Pole, they talk about melting glacier. But that would not make sense to my mother in the village, right? If I'm talking about climate change and relating it to melting glacier. One, she does not know what glacier is all about. I've never seen it myself. Then we have to relate it to the daily lives of the people. So for me, climate change seems to be the impacts that have just some of which I've just mentioned. We now have more floods, sea level rise. Those who are in the coastal areas, they can tell you. If you go to Ede now, and some of these islands and the Douala estuary, you see that foundation of houses that were on dry land are some hundreds of meters into the sea, which means the sea has come
closer,
risen to the land. And those are some of the impacts of climate change that we never knew before, but they're happening today.
Okay. And we are talking right here from Cameroon and precisely in Yaoundé. And those of us here in Yaoundé can testify to the unusual heat and the unusual rainfall. So climate change is not a myth, it's a reality. And it is happening right now. And something needs to be done. And that's why we are here today.
So before you go to the next question, you talked about AXIA.
Yes.
I said I wanted to start from the PanAfrican Climate Justice Alliance before going to AXIA.
Of course.
AXIA, the African Coalition for Sustainable Energy and Access, was created in 2016 on the sidelines of AMSEN that took place in Egypt in February 2016 in Cairo, Egypt. This was because the issues related to energy, access to energy, renewable energy, were also being discussed in a very northern-centric manner or approach. Let me ask you a question, or rather not a question, but let me just say, if someone has food to eat and has a choice to either eat meat or eat vegetable or be a vegetarian, and the person that has no food to eat at all, if they sit at the table, what question will you ask the person that has a choice between meat and vegetable and the person that has no food at all? Will you ask them the same question?
No.
Okay. If I were to ask the question, I'll ask the person that has a choice. Are you going for meat or for vegetables? Then, for the other person, I will not ask a question. Wash your hands and eat. Okay?
Yes.
That is the same thing we have with energy. 630 million Africans don't have access to any form of energy in sub-Saharan Africa. Then for some other countries in the developed world, they have access to energy. Now they have a choice between clean energy, which they must do, and dirty energy that they have been doing since the Industrial Revolution. So the discussion we have with those countries that have polluted to the extent that we are having the climate crisis should be different from the discourse that we have with developing countries, especially sub-Saharan Africa. We're not by any way saying that they should also go for dirty energy, but you should understand that they have a critical problem, a crucial problem, which is access to energy, full stop,
Yes.
before the kind of energy. Now, the argument of those who don't want to go the renewable path is that they need to develop their own fossil energy to an extent that they stabilize before they start thinking of this. We say no. It's better not to make the mistakes of others. It is true that going head on to renewable energy might be costly, but you can manage it by leapfrogging. That is, by not investing in dirty energy before taking the pains to change into renewable energy. Rather, you just invest in what is energy for the future.
Energy for the future.
But with that kind of argument, you have to be convincing. You have to show that you care about the problem of access. If you just come and say, stop using fossil fuels, then it is not fair.
Yes.
Especially you that has been using fossil fuel and developing and benefiting from it, and you continue to benefit from it, and that has the luxury of changing, of choosing to someone that is living in darkness. So this kind of African perspective, just as PAGJA, AXIA is also there to look at these things from an African perspective. And we prefer dialogue, a tripartite dialogue between investors, that's private sector, the government, and the civil society. And the message is that it's better to invest in renewable energy now than investing in dirty energy with the hope of changing it tomorrow. You know, remodeling a house is more expensive than building a house from scratch.
Okay.
So if they already invest in dirty energy and have those infrastructures standing there, and they will contribute to air pollution, to greenhouse gas emissions, and then in the future they want to change, it will be much more costly. Why not just go for the right thing, although it's a little bit more expensive?
Okay.
But we have to do that from an African perspective in a dialogue way, not imposing, not like coming like a master, telling them, you stop this, you stop this. That language doesn't work for Africa.
Wow, very interesting. And Axia and PAGJA have been doing an amazing work in the field of renewable energy and access. And you can see this on their website. So we're going to put up the links for you later on to check on it. So, sir, continue with our questions. I would like to ask you, because in our world today, we see youth thinking that becoming a climate change advocate is a bed of roses. It's something you can just get up today and tomorrow you are big. So I would like to ask you, what advice can you give to these youth who think becoming a climate change advocate is something easy?
No, it is not difficult. It is not difficult.
Okay.
It's one thing becoming a climate change advocate, and it's another practicing advocacy.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
You can sign climate change advocate. You can even sign whatever. But if it is not coming from within, if it's not coming from a conviction,
Okay.
it will be very challenging. And talking about youth in particular, I think it is important for the African youth. Most of the time I talk about African youth. It is important for the African youth to first of all know that we need to stand firm as Africans. Otherwise, we can be taken by the wind. You've been to negotiations. Now, this is your third negotiation you have been to, and you see how challenging they are.
Definitely.
Some things that are just so simple, logical, from face value. When you give you the background to that, you see how difficult it can become.
Yes.
The challenge also is, in our case, for instance, when we created PAGJA, the challenge did not only come from within the continent, because we brought the concept of climate justice. We're not just talking about climate change, we're talking about climate justice. Even our governments And many people did not believe in the concept of climate justice, the issue of justice in climate change. They thought that is something, is this radical stance of civil society as usual. But I'm proud to say that today, every African government is talking about climate justice, looking at these negotiations, looking at everything from a climate justice perspective. So, for the youth, if you don't believe in something, this head-on collision can discourage you. Don't be discouraged. If you believe in it, it can never be a walk in the park. It can never be a walk in the park. If you be discouraged by roadblocks, don't try it. Just do something else. But if you believe in it, you will, because it is the truth.
Yes.
It is the path to go. One day you shall prevail.
Amen.
Like Gandhi said, Mahatma Gandhi said, first, they ignore you. Then they laugh at you. Then they fight you. And then you win. When you start with something, they ignore, oh, these are just youths, small boys and girls doing their thing. And then sometimes they laugh at you, they mock at you. Then when they see that you are consistent and you are serious, they start fighting you. But what happens? You win. My encouragement to African youth is, you hear many people say, oh, these people are so radical. Some people will make you feel like you are more important, you are more intelligent, you are more rational. It's only to get you away from the African position. It is not most of the time in the interest of Africa. But once you believe that what you are saying or what you are doing is the interest of the continent, never be afraid. Our forefathers that fought for our independence,
Yes.
their detractors were not just from Europe or from the West. Their detractors were even within. Those who fought hard against our independence were mostly in the countries, in the colonies. So that is the same thing we have in civil society. You are fought from outside. There are people instrumentalized from inside to fight you from inside. But if you believe in what you are doing, and you are doing it with a good heart, it shall always prevail, because as you fight, the ancestors are also fighting for you.
Exactly. You have all heard from the guru himself. Becoming a climate change advocate is not something, it's not a difficult issue. Becoming a practitioner, now that is where the problem lies. So you have to believe in whatever it is you are fighting for, whatever it is you are advocating for. My next question was going to be about the challenges you faced, but I believe you already mentioned that along the line while you were answering the questions. So as we're coming to the end of our podcast, this our very first episode, I would like to remind us all to please like, share, comment, and give your reviews. We appreciate everything you're going to say to us, either positive or negative. We appreciate it. So I would like to ask you, sir, this is going to be a very fun question. I would just like to ask you, which do you prefer, singing or do you prefer dancing?
I prefer both.
Okay.
I sing and dance.
Okay, okay.
When I'm stressed, I sing.
Okay.
When I'm happy, I sing.
All right.
Then the happiest moment is when I'm dancing.
All right.
And especially when I'm dancing with my grandson.
Oh my God. So he's not just a climate change advocate, he's a grandfather and he's a father. We congratulate you, sir, and we thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can you give us like maybe a line from your favorite song?
Well, I have two types of songs.
Okay.
Religious songs and secular songs.
Okay.
For religious songs, it is Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
An amazing one. Thank you very much.
That is it.
Thank you
For
very
a
much.
secular song, it's a song that I sing in honor of my mother.
Okay.
And it was sung by Prince Nikumbarga. the Nigerian Cameroonian musician, and it is Sweet Mother.
Oh.
Whenever I speak in this climate change debates, the only picture I have in my mind is that of my mother, because she's that woman that has raised children from the farm with her husband, a very hardworking woman, faithful, encouraging, a fighter, but a very gentle lady. So goes like this. Sweet mother, I no go forget you, for this suffer where you suffer for me. Yeah. I think she suffered for us, and all mothers suffer for their children.
Exactly.
They should not be victims of climate change again. That's why we fight, and we'll continue to fight. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I am a living testimony of the love he has for his mother. So I've come right to the end of our very first podcast. And again, I'm reminding you all to please like, share, comment, and give us your review. Thank you, and until next time.